really happy with where we've gone with the show. I'm glad that we moved away from change of heart and to skill treat. I think it lets us talk about new and exciting ideas that kind of point to both of our backgrounds and our interests and those kinds of things. I do have more thoughts on skill tree because it is the segment that makes me most anxious, I think. But overall, I think the Deep Head Delights let us give us some freedom, I suppose. We can bring up whatever we want, and I think that we both like when the show feels more cohesive when the Deep Head Delight is related to the main content of the show.
Yeah.
But I like that that's not a necessity either. I think I like the freedom. But what about you?
I really like where the show is. I really like some of the potential it has and kind of where it could stretch to. How I'm feeling right now in regards to Change of Heart becoming skill tree, I really like that because I think Change of Heart maybe had a more debate or kind of like I don't know what to call it, like maybe persuasion, something like that. It was almost like capping the episode in a way of like, whose point won? That's how I look at it in some regards. I do like being able to mention just generally like, oh yeah, you got a good point. Maybe I see it that way. But the skill treat I think is like cool. It also makes me anxious just trying to figure out like, oh man, what do I even share with people? And beyond that, it's like extra intimidating because it's like, oh, now I'm like teaching them something. So I really better not be like talking out my ass or, just saying like whatever I want willy-nilly. But I think it's cool. And in general, I have like at least some sort of vague interest in what teaching or sharing knowledge, I should say, more so, because I think they're very different things. But yeah, skill tree allows me to kind of get my fill of like knowledge sharing and stuff. And, if anyone listens, like, great, I get to almost better humanity by giving a little piece of information out. And if not, the aliens will listen to it at some point.
Yeah, I also like that we listen to each other. This gives us a like kind of a forum, and for me, I'm glad that it's preserved. The conversation is preserved, and I've already learned a lot of different things. So in terms of like, it would be nice to have viewers or listeners, and nice to have engagement. Like, I would love for people to write into the show and suggesting skill treats or with their own idea of what a skill treat is. I think that stuff would be really cool. But insofar as we like don't have that like robustly at this point, where this is still very early days, assuming that this is like a long-term project or somewhat long-term project.
I mean, this project is definitely long-term to me. I guess sure, in the grand scheme of things, like I'm 28 or whatever, and like this is maybe getting close to a year of recording on this project and stuff, but that still feels very like long-term to me. I think like the project I've longest been a part of is like 4 years or whatever. So, and I mean, just in general, like not DDP related, but just me as a content creator that does it from passion. Anything that takes like longer than a month just tends to destroy me. So having a macro project like this that has like micro projects that we can like make progress on and actually accomplish on like a sort of bi-weekly basis, I think it's taught me a lot of new shit. Like that in itself has been a skill treat. It's like really kind of helped with the ebb and flow of my life and my at least when it comes to like productivity and content creation or whatever. It's like there's a different way to do this. Like, I don't need to slam my head against the wall for like a month on the same thing. There's other stuff there. And also like, knowing when to pump the brakes and be like, that's it. Like, I've nurtured this enough. Like, it must go to school and like grow up and do what the fuck it needs to do in the world to make things better.
I think it's interesting how seriously we both like ran with this idea and how much work we are like those. I like how you described it as like a macro project with micro projects, like it is, everything is one step at a time, you know. It's like each episode is like was an idea, and then it became an outline, and then it was recorded and then chopped up and edited, and you know, like, and the planning for all the meetings that we have and stuff like that. Yeah, I think we took it really seriously, and you know, it was just kind of a laughable idea like a year ago or so, and then, you know, I think by December of 2020 we'd started recording.
Yeah, I think it was basically like, hey, we want to talk about video games, but we don't want to talk about video games the way everyone else is. And do other people want to talk about video games the way we talk about video games? And from there, I think, like, I don't know what you want to call it, productive narcissism kicked in. And we just, you know, started like having these conversations. But I agree with something you said earlier, that like at the very least, I'm glad that I can like listen back to these and see how like opinions have grown and like reshaped, or I don't know, just it's a cool time capsule. I mean, like the biggest moment for me so far has been hearing my pre-control self, like Control, the video game, like hearing me talk about the game Control before I actually played it, and then like getting this kind of like weird like Dr. Manhattan sensation of like I am in the present day, hearing myself talk about this game, hearing my past self talk about this game, and suddenly having a flash of all the memories between like not knowing shit about this game, playing this game a whole fucking lot, and then like making a whole video about this game and like articulating all these different thoughts and doing so much editing, and then
2 videos
back to present.
You made 2, I think.
Actually, yeah. 2, right. The one video turned into 2. And like all of that to then suddenly like a rubber band just slap right back into my body in the present day. And I'm going to keep that fucking clap in there. I'm sorry, listener. But to bring all that back into the present day and just be like, whoa, like I dedicated a big chunk of my life to that fucking thing. It's weird. I don't know. I wonder if there is a word to that feeling. Like, you know how other languages or countries have like words for certain feelings that don't translate directly to other like cultures. Yeah, maybe there's something like that, but for the weird sense of like time. It's like you're out of time, but not out of time, but like, you know, you're like Kang. You're sort of like you're outside the time loop looking in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I really like the D-pad delights just in general. I think that's an awesome way to start the show. And if we ever get guests on here, I think it's a really good way to like learn about them like right off the bat and give our listeners a chance to learn about them in a more relatable way too. You know, it's not just like, I don't know, what game do you think was good? It's like more so something like, how did this actually resonate with you? Like, did it have an impact on you, you know? Like, sure, Final Fantasy VII can make us cry, but did Final Fantasy VII suddenly have you valuing your relationships differently? Or did it, like, make you a better gambler through, like, one of its side stories? Like, that type of stuff, I think, is cooler, maybe more insightful.
Did it make you a better gambler? What are you thinking of, Red Dead or something?
No, there's various gambling mini games across a lot of games.
Grand Theft Auto. Like, skill tree. Is there anything that you're excited to talk about, or is there anything that you want to hear from me, or are you?
One idea I really want to get just out there is the Kinetic Toolbox, and I cannot really speak too much more on that without going into like a 45-minute long episode or something, you know what I mean? So I will just give you the quick sort of glance. The Kinetic Toolbox is going to be this kind of like design lens or framework that helps VR in kind of like having better pacing, being more like being playable for longer periods of time, and just other things that kind of help keep your body feeling okay in VR while playing. The Kinetic Toolbox is kind of more towards like the gameplay side of that, but that's something I really want to like share with people. And I've actually like, I've presented on it. I've like written about it a whole lot. I just haven't actually like put any of that writing out there, and I've only presented it to like, you know, behind closed doors, like presentations, NDA type stuff. So yeah, that's one idea that like I guess it's a collection of ideas that I really want to get out there. But I think it's probably way too big for a skill treat, so I don't know. How about you though? That's the Kinetic Toolbox really is the only thing that comes to my mind immediately, but I'm very curious to know what you would like to share.
I don't think I've really done like philosophical concepts yet. Like, you know, let's get into like what it means to be a deontologist or something like that, you know, or you know, talking about different like metaphysical ideas, like maybe personal identity through the context of some game. That I don't like, no games come to mind, so like I have these ideas of like philosophical nuggets that I think might be fun to share and like discuss with you, but linking them to the video games is kind of the part. Like I'd have to think harder about like what I was going to do with that specifically.
Interesting. Yeah, I would really like to hear more of that too, because at least my understanding is like a lot of these thoughts or philosophies tend to shine in like movies, like, and their archetypes, you know. So I think people were saying like Thanos, for instance, was like was it like a utilitarian or something? Basically, like, yeah, he wanted to sacrifice like half the universe so that the other half could, you know, actually live, because otherwise the universe was going to collapse on itself. And I know like Wisecrack typically does like, here's the connection of movies to like that type of stuff. But maybe it could practically like be a game at some point, just like trying to connect these cool things that you want to like bring up to a game, because like
that is
my big library
fun
of games like might be able to help connect like what's going on there.
Yeah, I mean, when that's how we like talk, I think often I'll be like you'll either tell me about a game and I'm like, oh, that reminds me of this thing, you know, or like I'll be like, yeah, so, you know, like I was thinking about, you know, my like how my understanding of metaphysics and like blah 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 blah, and then you'll be like, oh my god, that's like in Catherine, like
oh, that's another one too.
Know?
Yeah, we were talking about Catherine at one point.
I still haven't played that. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I'm very excited for, speaking of like, you know, things we're excited for, bonus Byte or episode that I'm very excited for is Catherine and how it relates to like relationships, like guilt, adultery, all this different shit. It is very philosophical for sure. I think it's more philosophical on like the relationships side of things, whereas maybe games like Persona and or Nier Automata are like, they're way more about kind of like just living. Persona being like more in between. But anyway, very excited for you to like try those games and us to be able to talk about them. Do you feel like the show could use another segment, or do you think we could trim a segment out of it currently? Like, do you think the segments are like really good, like, yo, let's just keep rolling with them, maybe we add something, or like what's your read on that? Because it sounds like you really like Skill Treat. We like the main show as it is. D-pad delights seem to be doing okay, so I'm wondering, like, do you want to add anything to it?
I like the 3-part structure a lot. I think a change that I would be totally open to is swapping Skill Treat. Like, if I'm down to have other segments, and I think Skill Treat would be the best one to swap. I think the first two are good where they are. I think that they're like pretty sturdy and pretty open. But if we wanted to like incorporate a game or something, you know, into the, or just other segments that was an
interesting thing. I'm going to pull at the game thread here. So if I had to, like, if I told you we have to switch D-pad delights for something that's still fun and exciting at the top of the show, like, what would you want? If D-pad delight was somehow trademarked by another company and we absolutely can't do it, what are you replacing it with?
Yeah, I think we could do a game for D-pad delights, if that's what you're getting at. That sounds to me like what you're hinting at. I don't have a specific game in mind. I think we'd have to, you know, like brainstorm that at like a separate breakout session. But like, or do you have if you have anything? I mean, go ahead and throw it.
I don't have a full on game. I just thought it was like, I just want I thought it was a fun sounding idea and still trying to keep the top of the show very like light, right out of a cannon almost in a sense. A game, I don't know how we want to treat referencing other podcasts here, but when I think of an intro game, right, I think of that one-upsmanship podcast and how they do that like game description in a certain amount of time. Like that seems like a game in and of itself, but it also is like it's fun. It gets me like listening at the very beginning. Like I'm wondering, like, is there something maybe along those lines, like not to ape their style, but something that is like fun that would like keep us engaged, both as a host and as a listener, of course.
Yes, I also really like that podcast. And one of the ways that their podcast differs than ours, and you know, like we couldn't really rip it off in a way that would make sense, is that their episodes cover the entirety of a specific game, whereas ours are covering more of like an idea, and we'll like apply games to the idea that we're like the ideas that we're presenting in the episode. So the game wouldn't make sense, but. I don't know. I mean, it feels like a lot of stuff is like kind of claimed, you know. There's like the Xbox podcast Unlocked does trivia, you know, they do a trivia question.
Right.
GameScoop has 20 video game 20 questions, which is an amazing segment. That's super fun.
Mm-hmm.
So no other games are kind of coming to mind. I feel like those are really like good radio friendly types of games, like fun listening along. They don't take too long. I can't remember what the PlayStation people do for IGN. Do you know?
No, I don't. I've been out of that loop for a long time. But I'm sure we could think of something fun and unique to our brand, I guess you could call it at this point. But right?
It feels so weird to say that, but yeah, I guess.
It feels very weird and kind of douchey. Don't like it. But yeah, Deep in the Deep Head, we certainly, you know, we're not doing video game 20 questions. The closest thing I could think to us doing that is like, who is this, or like, you know, guess this video game. And I mean, that is video game 20 questions, but it's like this just based off of these tangential like ideas. You can't directly reference anything in the game. It's like, oh, okay.
We could do like Taboo. We could make it like a Taboo type game.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, we're TM. Anyone listening to this, trademarked. Fuck off. We're gonna work on this later.